My name is Jason Dawson, and in my video you will see women and their struggles on the road to equal rights. Not only in this video you see people from the past talking, but you will see people from the present that you can relate to.
Is my bacon ready yet? 20 past 8. Some more toast, team. Hey, team, why don't you get cracking on a thorough fall house cleaning campaign around here? Get the floors waxed, get the windows washed, get this place looking as if civilized people are in residence, Gee, that's a little light, isn't it?
Sorry, I hurried it.
Sweetie, have a little more damson plum preserves, please.
To the women of the world, from the women delegates and advisors at the First Assembly of the United Nations.
You know, sometimes the events of decades can crystallize in a moment, and it seems as if overnight there's this historic change. When you look back at it, you say, oh, well, this was building up, and for years there was this person and this person and this group, and they were networking and this, and then there was a shift. The women's movement had many origins. In part, it owes its renewed birth to the civil rights movement, because there was then a lesson for the women of America of how blacks at that time were taking their life into their own hands.
This experience, which black Americans were having, did not go unnoticed by the rest of America. Something had started that was beginning to spread, a new kind of pride, identity, and consciousness that was about to turn the mass movements of the 1960s into new and different forms of activism.
If two women were in a restaurant eating together, it was common for a man or a couple of men to come up to them and assume that they were there to be talked to and that they weren't there for any purpose of themselves. Women began to, they set up these consciousness-raising groups in which they would, for the first time, not be interrupted. And everything was talked about, you know, everything from high school to your first menstruation to your first sex to go, you know, everything was talked about. That's when women suddenly understood that their own personal history was significant. And that's where the phrase, the personal is political, came from.
And that connection of realizing that the personal is political and therefore justifies political action was one of the revolutionary ideas of the beginning of the women's movement.
In 1970, America was still very much a man's world. More women than ever were joining the workforce, but at the same time, they were still expected to be the traditional housewives and mothers of a generation earlier. In some states, women could not obtain credit cards or mortgages without a male cosigner, and nationally, they were paid an average of 59 cents for every dollar a man earned. In short, American women were still second-class citizens.
It is important to consider the prevalence of violence within society.
The message to the women of the world is, arise.
The women's movement is a political movement.
Human rights are women's rights, and women's rights are human rights once and for all.
Now, we fought the public accommodations fight 10 years ago with the blacks. Are we going to have to start all over again with women?
How about, would you like a sign up there that said blacks only or whites only? It's the same principle, sir. Women are persons, women are people.
And we want to be able to come and go through it, and we don't want to be intimidated by signs that say men's buffet.
I have no intentions of taking the sign down or changing the sign. If you can get a court order to take it down, fine.
You have no intention of changing your policy of segregated facilities. Is that correct, sir?
If you women are that hard up for a glass of beer, I'll be glad to serve you to bar.
Do you know what kind of woman you have to be to rise in an all-male run, all-male controlled, all-male executed, all-male domain, all men all the time? Do you know what kind of woman you have to be to survive, not only survive, but to thrive and to gain their utmost respect, their utmost regard, and to gain the admiration of not only the men you work with, but everybody who encounters you. Do you know what kind of woman you had to be in 1980? You gotta be powerful.
This amazing woman who had been doing the same job as a man for years found out that she was getting paid less, and the Supreme Court said that she couldn't bring suit because she should have found out about it earlier. She had no way of finding out about it.